Welcome to another edition of the Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul DeLegro, your host, and no guest today. So I'm going to do something a little different. I've had some requests to go solo and tell some stories of my own because I usually have a few good stories. So we're going to break in the new year with just some of my thoughts about the podcast, and I got a very funny story to tell you guys. But before I get to that, share some of my thoughts about this podcast. I've been doing this for about over 3 years now. And I will say this, when I first started doing it, like anything else in life, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how it would go. And the last 3 years, I have met some wonderful people. I've met some people that I would have never met in my life without this podcast. And I've had all sorts of different people on, like the big one is Bobby Martini, he was an author of Citizen Somerville, guy that I grew up with in Somerville, Mass. Crazy guy, all gangster type stuff. So you write the book. I'm going to start. Why'd you write the book?
Well, I wrote the book because I'm with Howie all the time. I'm taking the spot today, buddy. You know what I mean?
Well, see, the one thing you did, Bobby, that he didn't do is you wrote this book.
Yes.
And you can get it on Amazon, everybody.
Yeah.
Just a little plug there for
That's
you,
my
Bobby.
brother with me, My grandmother made those clothes.
Unbelievable.
My German grandmother made all those clothes for all of us. We had no money.
Yeah, who did?
You didn't have no money.
No, my father was a meat cutter at the First National Store.
Yeah. People say, well, those people from the projects had no money. Well, they're full of shit because those people from the projects, the only reason the projects were made is because of World War II. Right. And for all the people coming back from World War II, they had somewhere to go. Right? What? All the veterans. It was basically veterans. And then when they made enough money to get out of there, that's when they became, they were middle class anyways, because we were just as poor as they were, but they fought in the war, and my father didn't, although he joined them. A
guy like Rico Carubia, who worked for Sinatra, who's a sound of Sinatra and all those guys. And
then all of a sudden he announced to us that we were going to have Frank Sinatra. And I go, wow. So Frank Sinatra's going to start playing here. So we changed the whole showroom, got everything ready, and we're doing Frank Sinatra. And we did it about 2 or 3 times, and it went great. But I was the house engineer. I wasn't the mixer. He was engineer. So what happened was, I was getting ready to go back to graduate school. And then one night, I was waiting for Sinatra sound engineer as I'm sitting there in my tux. And all of a sudden, it's like 10 to 8, and Sinatra does not go on at 8:05. He goes on at 8 o'clock. So there's the 80-piece orchestra, and we're all ready to go. And I'm looking at the clock, and I start calling this gentleman's room, and no answer. I started calling the operators in the hotel saying, page him, please, because they're going, listen.
You're starting to panic now.
Yeah, because we're talking, it's 5 minutes of showtime. So I actually said, all right, I'll be right back. And I ran running down the hallway, screaming his name, going to every local watering hole around the showroom, find out where the heck is he, man? This is awful. Because I realized I'm the only guy in the room that's going to have to mix Frank Sinatra. And I just didn't know if I was ready for that.
Yeah, no pressure, though. It's only Frank Sinatra. No pressure.
So I get back in the room, and they just go, get behind the board. I go, okay. So I got there, and just, and I was the one that made the announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Sinatra. And here he comes strolling out. You know him. He just strolls out. He's got the drink on the piano. And then he just starts singing that slicing through butter voice.
Oh, yeah.
And I just started mixing. And I realized, okay, I could do this. I'm doing this. But the whole time I'm going, where are you? And I kept looking. So now we're like 45 minutes through the show. And finally through the door, when everything was going well, he comes stumbling in, knocking in tables and everything, still holding his drink. And from the stage, Frank says his name and says, we won't be needing you anymore. And I went, oh, okay. And here we are 40 years later.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
it's been such a great run. Guys like Mark Bowden, right? Talk about bodyling. He's been on national TV. the celebrities out there and some of the people that are on TV giving interviews and critiquing, are they telling the truth or not? I think that's a big aspect of this, right? When you're in meetings and you're talking to people and judging them, okay, they're coming clean with me or they not, you know?
Yeah. It's an obsession with people, and quite rightly so. Look, we want to make sure that we're not being duped in some way. We want to make sure that that person who we do trust, should we really trust them? Should we trust them over time? So not only do some of us want to use our natural intuition around that, but we want to be even more certain. We want to use our critical thinking skills around that. And that's where really expertise comes in, because I don't have a better intuition than you do, Paul. We're both alive right now, which means our intuition is actually pretty good. Good to the extent that it's saved our lives on a number of occasions. Okay.
Yep.
But what I want to do is be able to think cognitively a little better, faster, in the right ways, so that I can literally say to somebody, hey, I've really looked at this, and I think you can be certain that this person is not telling you the truth, or this person is telling you the truth. Not that I can absolutely guarantee it, but sometimes I will go, look, I totally guarantee this for you. Sometimes but I'm not there outgoing, advertising myself as always 100% guarantee. I will tell you if there's somebody, being deceitful or being honest with you. But I can get closer to the truth than most other people would get,
Another guy, Dana Owen. I'd like to thank him as well. He wrote a book called Shotgunned. He was a Metro cop in the Boston area, got shot in the head during a high-speed chase, and took him 11 years to get results and get those guys convicted. Some of them died, but he brought that to closure. And they're going to hopefully, Netflix is going to do a story on him sometime soon.
So we hit a set of railroad tracks and hit it so hard that we flew into the air, and both our heads bashed into the ceiling of the cruiser, into the roof of the cruiser. As we went over there, it wasn't too many feet away, and gunfire, it was really almost dark now, started coming out of the right and left of the bad guy's car. And you kind of revert back to your training, and I know I counted 6 rounds from each side, a total of 12 rounds. It didn't take a brain surgeon to figure they're out of ammunition. They're shooting revolvers at us, or it sounded like revolvers. We've been a cop for a while. You can tell usually the caliber of a gun by the sound of it.
Right.
The echo. So I said to my father, I said, hang on, I'm going to ram him. And so he held on, and I got up behind him, and I was going to give him a push. As I went to hit him, the whole rear window of the car, the bad guy's car, shot out. It just exploded outward at us. Glass everywhere. It was obviously a shotgun. It was a big orange flame. There's no doubt in my mind what it was. They just blew the window out with a shotgun. I heard some of the pellets hit the car, assumed it was double O buck. We kept going, shotgun fired again, and I started slowing down a little bit. And then a shotgun fired again, and I felt something hit the top of my head, right up here. And I found out later, after doing a lot of studying, to do something called denial in situations like that. And I said to my partner, crap, I've been hit by a rock. I really thought a rock got through, and then I realized I was shot. I put my hand on top of my head and I was bleeding like a stuffed pig, literally. So my partner says, you want to give it up? And I said, I'll censor this a little bit. I said, it's the last flipping thing I ever do. I'm going to catch these guys.
Also had some business folks on. I am in technology sales, so we've had some folks on from Nutanix, from Dell, Cohesity, Rubrik, Fortinet, Cisco, NetApp, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple. And thanks to all those folks for being on. I'm going to try to continue the technology trend into 2024. So it's been a great run. I've learned a ton about different people, different things, anxiety and sales coaching, things of that sort. So again, thanks to everybody for being on the show. Oh, one last one, Leo Chen and the robot Amik. I want to thank them for being on the show. That was a great show where we interviewed. If you haven't seen it, go watch that. It was a pretty fun episode. I interviewed Leo, and a humanoid robot, which is kind of cool in the wave of the future. So,
Hello viewers, welcome to Business Brains and the Bottom Line with your host Paul DeLigro. Really excited to listen in. I'll be a guest today along with my minion Leo Chen of Engineered Arts.
We're in the middle of a giant hype cycle for robotics. With the advent of large language models and with everything that people are doing in that space, suddenly robotics becomes super compelling to folks. Like, people have these dreams of the Maid from Jetsons, or
Sure.
me personally having a personal R2-D2 that I can call my own, stuff like that.
That would be cool. So that's kind of my thoughts on the podcast. It's really been enjoyable. Great to get in front of the camera. A lot of people do tell me I have a face made for radio, so that could be true, but that's if you listen to me. But if you're watching me, unfortunately, you got to look at me. So someone told me my superpower is storytelling. So I got one I want to share with you guys, totally unrelated to the podcast. It was probably about 30 years ago. I spent some time in a Mexican prison, and I'm not saying as a visitor. So how this all happened, I had coached American Legion baseball. One of the guys that I coached when they were 18, now the few years later, I became friends with. So now I'm probably in my early 30s. And they decide they want me to come to spring break with them. So I said, okay, let's go. But there were all these kids like 20, 21 at the time. So we go, and there's about 30 of us. And I kind of knew going in that this was not going to be an easy trip because a lot of these guys were just wild and out of control. And so, we're having a good time, just raising hell. And we were at this nightclub called Daddy-O's in Cancun. And a fight breaks out outside. So I hear, hey, there's a big fight going on. Well, growing up in Somerville, you had to have a certain level of toughness, and you had to get in a few fights in your life. You weren't a Somerville guy. That's just the way it is. I've never seen this many people fighting in one spot. There had to be 100 people fighting. I got like a bottle broken over my head. Someone tried to take a big stone and break it over my head. I ducked to hit my shoulder, and it was just mayhem. I'm just pulling guys off piles. I'm not really fighting at this point, but as we start pulling guys off piles, the police come. So we start running, and as we're running, I'm just trying to dodge stuff. I don't even know where I'm going. We're all scattering like flies. I turn down an alleyway, and I start running, and I realize it's a dead end. I can't leave. And I'm followed by a bunch of locals, and they're wanting a piece of me at this point, right? Thank God the cops got to me before they did. So net, they arrested 5 of us. Now, I didn't really do anything, but unfortunately, I was one of the gangs, so they got me. And so they took us to this prison. About an hour out of Cancun, you're going on this dirt road, Carcel Municipal. So I'm like, okay, this doesn't look good. One of the other problems was, when we get there, no one spoke English. So we start processing us, and we couldn't get anyone to speak English. So it was really frustrating. So they take all our money. And I found out later on they would give us a little bit of our money back because they had a commissary who could buy some things. And they put us in this one cell. I'm speeding up the story here because it would take me 3 hours to tell you the whole story. So we spend the first night in just an outdoor cell, just the 5 of us. Then in the morning we think, oh, we're going to get out of here. They start processing us again. And I'm thinking, okay, we're getting out of here. And they're like, no, you got to go into the general population. And it was like something out of a movie. They let us out one by one, and you're walking down this hallway with these cells with people just hanging out of them, screaming, yelling. And there's this one cell door that's open. I go in, and a couple of the other guys I was with were sitting down on the left. They just kind of tugged on my leg and said, sit down, whatever. So the 5 of us ended up getting in there. There was 30 guys in one cell, no beds, a toilet that had no running water. It stunk to high heaven, and it was disgusting. And so we sit there for a little while, and then one guy says to us, back of the cell. So we're like, okay, I don't know. I watch movies too. I don't know what to do here, but they're just doing what we're told. So we go to the back of the cell, and now we're trying to figure out. Now, mind you, this is like a half a day has gone by. We still haven't spoken to anyone what we were in for and why we were there. So time goes by, kind of feeling out. There's all the inmates and us. And one of the inmates, looks like kind of the lead inmate in that cell, looks at me and says, stand up. So I stand up, and he says in broken English, give me your money. Because at that point, they'd given us a little bit of our money back, and he started fishing my pocket, so I hid his hands away. And now, mind you, he's got 25 guys behind him, and I've got my 4 guys behind me, thinking, okay, this has got to be a dream because I'm in a Mexican prison. I'm standing here chest to chest with a guy that's probably in for murder or rape or something, and I'm going to die here. That's kind of what my thinking was. So I said, look, pal, I don't know if you can understand me, but I'm not giving you my money. And this is a funny line. One of the guys I was with looks at me and goes, my nickname was Legsy, by the way. So he's Legs. He says, what are we going to do? And I wasn't trying to be funny in any way, shape, or form. I said, look, all I know is in the movies, you have to stand your ground or they're going to eat us alive. So that's what we did. We stood up to them, didn't, act too tough because, we were outnumbered, and they did back down. And I tried it again about an hour later, and the same result. So I think when they knew when we weren't going to back down, and the guys I were with were young and in shape, so we weren't like skinny little guys. I mean, it was all big guys that were in shape, so they knew they would have had their hands full. And one of the guys, Jimmy Strategos, it's the only name I'm going to mention because he has passed away. He was a former Mr. Massachusetts bodybuilder, Mr. Teen Massachusetts bodybuilder. The guy was in phenomenal shape. And he looks at me and goes, look, Legsy, I know I can take 20 of these guys. He goes, all you guys have to do is handle the other 25, the other 5. So, which is kind of stupid thinking that when you're in a Mexican prison, right? So, again, frustration's building. We don't know what the hell we're there for. So finally, we're standing by the door trying to get the guards' attention, like get some information, and no one's listening. So this one inmate walks by, and he was a white guy, but he started speaking. He spoke with a Spanish accent. Turned out he was from Spain, and he was an inmate in the prison. He looked at us, and he spoke great English. He said, "What are you guys doing here?" Finally, we got something to speak English. So he said, "We have no idea. There was a fight at a nightclub. I don't really know what's going on. They arrested 5 of us, and here we are." So he goes, okay, hold on. So time goes by. We get pulled out of our cell. I don't know who this guy was. He was the only inmate that had his own cell. Still to this day, I don't know what he was in for, who he was. Maybe he was some big cartel guy or what have you. I don't know. So he brings us into a cell, and he's like, I'm thinking he's going to try to shake us down. Doesn't. He goes, do you know where you guys are? Like, we're in prison. I know that. We're pretty smart guys. He goes, this is a maximum security prison. What did you guys do? I'm like, hey, we got in a fight at a nightclub. They arrested us. That's all I know. And that's the truth. We weren't lying. So he kind of knew we were telling the truth. And so he says, okay, let me see what I can do. So time goes by, and they come get us again. And this is hours later, by the way. It's not like 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, they bring us in the warden's office. And there's someone from the American embassy there, a consulate from the American embassy, with this one inmate. I forget his name. It's been so many years, I forget his name. So they say we have to fill out this paperwork. And finally, the consulate spoke English, right? They were the American consulate. So they start filling out this paperwork, name, address, in the event you don't get released, who do you want notified in the United States? Who is your congressman? And I'm reading through this. I'm like, why are we filling out these forms? We're getting out of here, right? And she looked at me. She says, no. I go, what do you mean, no? She said, you have to stand trial for the crimes you've committed. I said, what crimes? And she opens up this list, like 20 things that we did. Stuff that I did, breaking and entering, demolishing property, all this stupid stuff they made up. And that's when I started to get nervous, because I'm like, okay, this is not a joke anymore. Not that we thought it was a joke, but, So I'm thinking, okay, what do we got to do? Now, in the meantime, in conjunction with what we were doing, evidently our friends on the outside had contacted, the American Travel Services or something to see what they could do. So they were working in conjunction with the courts to try to get us out. But if they didn't get us out by Friday, we would have had to spend the weekend there and then go to trial on Monday. So I said to the consulate, I said, wait a sec. If we go to trial, what are our chances of winning? She looked at us, she kind of shrugged her shoulders and said, you're in Mexico. We have no jurisdiction yet. I go, so we're going to lose. She goes, oh yeah. So I said, how long are we going to do? She goes, 4 months. I go, 4 months? I mean, again, this is so irrational to me, but at the time it started to sink in, like, we're going to be here for a while. So evidently they got word that, our friends on the outside were trying to get us out, trying to get the judges. And evidently they did get to a judge. Now, mind you, this is, again, I'm speeding up the story. They did get to a judge, and they paid him off. I think it was like $1,200. I forget exactly what it was, but it was well worth it to get. But mind you, we weren't out of the woods yet. So we kept trying to get in touch with, the warden and try to coordinate. Our friends brought us some sandwiches, so we ate. But I do want to touch on one thing that really bothered me. As it turned out, the conditions in that jail were so bad. It stunk to high heaven. I mean, they had a toilet in the corner, so if you had to go to the bathroom, you had to have like 30 guys watching you. They had no toilet paper. I mean, just gross, right? I actually started to befriend some of the folks around us. And some of them spoke a little bit of English, so we could kind of communicate. So I asked, what are you guys in for? And there were some murderers in there. There's all different crimes. And I asked some of the folks, how long you been there? 5 years, 10 years, 3. I mean, they've been there a long time. And I actually started to feel sorry for them. I know it may sound crazy, but as I got to know them a little bit, like, again, this is not like a normal prison. This is a Mexican prison where one guy had a hot plate and he was making pasta. I don't know how they get don't know how this all transpired, but they asked us if we wanted any. Like, you guys want to eat? So they gave us a little food. And so it was nice of them to do that. So they were human beings, right? That was the one thing I got out of it. Some of these guys were just, whatever. They were there, not that they were angels, but they were human beings. And I actually started feeling sorry for them because I don't think anyone should have to live like that. Again, they have to pay their dues and pay for the crimes they committed. But I think it was awful, those conditions. And when I left, I actually felt bad for them. Time goes by. We're telling them, look, our friends are coming. We got to a judge. We should be getting out of here soon. And we were in the warden's office. I said, look, you can't put us back into that shit. I didn't quite say that, but I think you get the message. So I said, our friends, and I was kind of bluffing because I had, again, we're passing notes. We couldn't even speak to anybody. They said they were working on a judge. They're going to try to get us out by the nighttime, Friday night, and if not, it had to wait till Monday. And I'm like, I can't even imagine 3 more days. We had spent 2 days there already. I couldn't imagine spending another, few days in this dump. I mean, it was terrible. Plus, who knows? I mean, there were some bad people in this prison, and we stuck out like sore thumbs. I mean, we weren't locals, and they knew it. So we said, hey, we don't care. Handcuff us to the post outside. Let us sit outside and wait. And that's what they did. They handcuffed us to the fence or whatever it was in the yard, and we just sat there for several hours. And then finally they came. The warden came out with a piece of paper, you're free to go. Like, great. So they process us. They give us some of our like belts and different things back, some of our personal belongings back. Now, mind you, we're an hour out of Cancun. I have no idea where we go. This is pre-internet. You didn't have a phone to Google where, search where you are. They let us out right in the middle of nowhere. They just open the front doors and you're free to go. I'm like, how are we getting back? They don't care. They just push you out. So we start walking. Now, there's 5 guys walking down the street in some small town in Mexico. Have no idea where we're going. We're going to obviously try to get back to the hotel. But again, in conjunction with what we were doing on the inside, try to get our friends had got to the American Travel Services, so they knew we were getting out, so they sent a car for us. So think about this. We got this couple of Mexican guys pull up to us and go, hey, you need a ride? And we're like, no, not from you. Because at this point, we were gun shy. We didn't take a ride. So we said, hey, you got to show us some identification before. So they did. They showed us the proper identification from the American Travel Services. And we had been walking for a while before they even found us. So God only knows how they found us. I don't know. I never asked. But so they did take us to our hotel. Our friends packed our bags and were in the lobby waiting for us. And I think if we had been like another half hour to an hour late, we would have missed our flight. But we finally got on our flight. And I did what every good American does after a situation like I stepped off the plane and kissed the ground. And I thank the Lord that I'm an American and I come from the greatest country in the world. It was quite an experience. I wouldn't want to go through it again because it was frightening. I will say this, there was times during, we've all been scared at different times in our life. There's a difference between being scared and being petrified. I was petrified, and I didn't show it. I try to hide it, to mask it, because you got to act like a tough guy in these prisons. But the thought, when I found out that we there's a big time possibility that we're going to do 4 months, if I didn't have pants on, you probably would have seen my knees shaking. That's how scared I was. But we did get out. We can look back and laugh at that now. It's 30 years later, but it's an experience that I'll never forget. And it was an unbelievable experience. And like I said, to the inmates that were there, again, I know I'm probably going to sound like a hypocrite in here, but they deserve to have better treatment than this. This was terrible. It was disgusting. I mean, it was just, you had to sleep on concrete, right? You'd sleep on a concrete floor. I think there was one guy that had a hammock, and there was all this pecking order stuff, which I don't quite understand. I wasn't there long enough to figure all that out. I knew there was some people that were higher up the echelon than some of the guys in our cell. And I can't even imagine living in those conditions for multiple years, let alone what I was going to be frightened to death of is a few weeks. So a few days. So, but at any rate, so that's my story. I've told a few people that story and they always howl. Some people don't believe it happened, but I do have, out of the 4 guys, like I said, I only mentioned one because Jimmy Stratikos, he's from Somerville, Massachusetts. He's passed away. So, but the other 2, I don't know if they'd want telling the story. So I'm going to respect their privacy and not say that, because we're all adults now. We're kids. We're all got families, and they may not be proud of it. And I don't know. I think it's pretty funny. In hindsight, it wasn't funny when it happened. Yeah, so one of the takeaways that I got from this is you're in a foreign country. That's the one thing, like American laws don't apply there. And you can say what you want about laws being fair, just like when you go to Europe, right? You're a foreigner there. And if you're going to go to a foreign country, you got to abide by the rules, right? And, I think a lot of these countries know that if you're a foreigner, they can take advantage of you. So keep your nose clean. And I have, trust me, that's in my mind all the time. When I travel, it doesn't get lost on me that I am a foreigner and I have to abide by their rules. And if you get in any trouble, now obviously at this point in my life, I'm not getting in any trouble, but when you're a kid, you do stupid things. And so that would be the lesson, the takeaway from that is respect people's cultures and laws. So another takeaway that I had too is that, again, I think I mentioned during the episode that I was petrified. And so when you think that you get nervous over things, family situations, business situations, and in my business, you have sales, you're trying to get orders in, you're trying to make money for your family. When I think of that versus what people go through like I went through, it's like night and day to me. So I try not to get nervous over the little things, although I tend to worry about things in general. But that was a real life and death situation in my mind. I may be over-exaggerating a little bit, but it's, again, we live in a great country where there's so much opportunity to better yourself, your family, and we should just feel very fortunate to be living where we're living. It's not a perfect country, as you know, with everything that's going on in the media and politics today, but it's a whole heck of a lot better than most other countries, I can guarantee you that. That's my personal story. I wanted to break in the new year of 2024, just in a different note. A few people have asked me to tell some stories and figure out the new year, doing something a little different as a solo. So hopefully you found that story entertaining. And if you have any questions, certainly ping me And I left out a lot here because there's so many intricate stories, one-on-one situation that went on, but that's the high-level story about me being in a Mexican prison. So that's a wrap for Business Brains and the Bottom Line. Happy New Year to everybody, and let's knock it out of the park this year.